Why do we dream? It's a question we've been asking forever, right? We wake up from some bizarre story our brain cooked up and immediately want to know what it all means. But for scientists, the real mystery isn't just about decoding the symbols. It's about a much bigger question. Why do we dream at all? What's the point? Let's get into it. So, a lot of us start right here with a question just like this one. We're trying to figure out if dreaming about, flying means we're ambitious, or if dreaming we're late for a test means we're anxious. It's like we're searching for the secret instruction manual for our own brains. But, in neuroscience, they're taking a step back and asking something way more fundamental. And that's the big pivot. See, before we can even begin to talk about what dreams mean, we've got to figure out what they do. What is their biological function? Do they even have one? That's the huge debate we're going to unpack today, looking at the three major competing theories. But first, let's get one thing straight. Okay, a quick but super important clarification. We tend to say dreaming and REM sleep like they're the same thing, but they're really not. REM sleep is a physical stage of sleep. Your body is doing specific stuff. Dreaming, on the other hand, is the conscious movie playing in your head. You can actually have one without the other. So today, we're zeroing in on the experience of dreaming itself. All right, let's meet our first contender. This is probably the most popular idea out there, the one that just kind of feels right, the theory that dreams are there to help us out. The basic idea is that when we go to sleep, our brain gets to work, sorting through all the messes from our waking life. And this theory really comes in two main flavors. So on one side, you've got the idea that dreams can solve intellectual problems. The classic story of a chemist dreaming up the structure of a molecule. Then on the other side, there's the much more common belief that dreams help us process our feelings, acting as a kind of overnight therapist. So how does this theory actually stack up? Well, for the whole intellectual problem-solving thing, not so great. In one big study, researchers gave students a brain teaser. Out of almost 1,200 nights of dreaming about it, a solution popped up in a dream only 7 times. That's less than 1%. So while the Eureka dream stories are amazing, the data says it's an incredibly rare event. Okay, so what about the emotional healing part? That seems more plausible, right? Well, the evidence here is surprisingly wobbly too. A lot of it is just correlational, which means we can't prove that dreams cause us to feel better. And here's the real kicker. When we need that healing the most, like after a traumatic event, our brains often give us intensely negative nightmares, which are actually linked to worse well-being. And that brings up a massive, glaring hole in this theory. Exactly. If our dreams are supposed to be our friendly neighborhood therapist, why are they so often absolutely terrifying? The problem-solving theory would have to call a nightmare a failure, the system glitching out. But what if it's not a glitch at all? What if the nightmare is the whole point? And that brings us to contender number 2. So get ready for a totally different way of looking at this. This next theory comes from evolutionary psychology, and it completely flips the script. It's called the threat simulation theory, and it suggests that those scary dreams aren't a bug, they're a feature. That's the punchline right there. According to this theory, dreaming is for having nightmares. It's not a mistake, it's your brain doing exactly what evolution designed it to do. So the idea is this. Dreaming is an ancient defense mechanism. It's basically a built-in, high-fidelity virtual reality simulator. For our ancestors who lived in a world full of constant danger, this was a way to practice. Every night, they could rehearse how to recognize and escape threats, saber-toothed tigers, enemy tribes, you name it, all from the safety of their own mind. And the evidence for this is actually pretty compelling. Just look at the emotions we feel in our dreams. One of the foundational studies in this area found a totally wild imbalance. 80%, 80 of the emotions reported from dreams are negative. Fear and anxiety are at the top of the list. Now, if dreams were for solving problems or wish fulfillment, you'd expect things to be a little more cheerful, wouldn't you? This massive tilt suggests dreams specialize in simulating the bad stuff. And the dream content tells the same story. Aggression is the #1 social interaction. And we're usually the one getting chased, not doing the chasing. What's even crazier is what kids dream about. Their dreams are packed with wild animals, way more than adults. We're talking up to 30% of their dreams. This doesn't reflect the dangers of a modern playground. It reflects the dangers of our deep evolutionary past. So you might be thinking, okay, but I don't wake up feeling like I just aced a survival course. And that's the thing. It's not conscious. This training is happening under the hood. The dream first helps your brain get better at spotting danger, and then it rehearses the actual motor skills for getting away. The result? In a real crisis, you might react just a fraction of a second faster, and that could be all it takes. But hold on, before we all decide we're just ancient survivalists in training, we have to consider a third, much more skeptical view. What if dreams aren't for anything? What if they're just meaningless brain static? Now, this is a pretty big idea in neuroscience. We know that one of the main jobs of sleep is to consolidate memories, to move them from a short-term holding area to long-term storage. According to this model, dreams are just a side effect. They're the conscious experience of this filing process, like hearing random snippets of audio as your computer defragments a hard drive. They don't mean anything. They're just noise. But there's a big problem with the just noise theory. As this quote gets at, dreams aren't usually just random flashes and sounds. They're surprisingly organized, aren't they? They have characters and places and plots. They tell stories, however bizarre. It seems really unlikely that pure random neurological static would consistently create something that feels so much like a movie. So after all that, where does it leave us? Well, we're in the middle of a really fascinating, really fierce scientific debate. There's no clear winner yet, and honestly, each of these theories has some pretty good points and some pretty big holes. Let's just run through the scorecard one last time. You've got the problem-solving theory, which feels nice and intuitive, but it really can't explain nightmares. Then you have the no-function theory, which makes sense from a purely mechanical brain perspective, but it struggles to explain why dreams are so narrative. And finally, the threat simulation theory, which does an amazing job explaining all the scary, weird stuff, but it basically says dreaming is an obsolete feature from a bygone era. You know, the biggest takeaway here is that the real science behind why we dream is so much deeper and more interesting than just looking up what it means to dream about a snake. The answer isn't a simple definition. It's this incredible investigation into memory, evolution, and the very nature of consciousness itself. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you wake up, heart pounding, from a really bad dream, just pause for a second and ask yourself, was that your brain feeling to comfort you? Or was it your brain perfectly running a training simulation for a dangerous world we left behind thousands of years ago? The answer is still out there, waiting in the dark.